Last several months, we have been going through a process of transformation as a congregation, especially over this past week. Thursday, we started out with a Seder meal, and we gathered around the table to experience that meal that Jesus was sharing with his disciples on that night when he instituted Holy Communion, the Lord's Supper, the meal of Thanksgiving that is sometimes called the Eucharist. When he takes that cup after supper, and so we experienced that with him. And then Friday night, we experienced and walked along with Jesus as he starts out in the garden and then makes his way to the cross, to his death, and into the tomb. And we had several pieces of artwork from some of our congregation members here, Ann Tanner and Andrea Lilly. And it was phenomenal. It helped us to really engage and experience it and move into those steps of Jesus, to move into the depths of what Jesus was experiencing that day when he was nailed on the cross and placed in the tomb. And there's going to be a video recap of it by Wednesday, Thursday at the latest, where you'll be able to check that out, and so you can see it if you missed it or you want to. Just sit in that for a moment. But we brought it to Jesus all the way to the tomb where he was laid. And this morning we come and we hear and we find and we see that tomb is now empty. It's empty. 3 days later, it's empty. These experiences, all of our wrestling and our movement through the story, using this as 31 chapters of Scripture, the rich version of Scripture, to help it make it read more like a novel, to understand how it all fits together, and it culminates in today's gospel that the grave is not won, but that Christ is risen. We started out this year at the very beginning with the story of creation, and as a congregation we worked at weaving in our story into the story of Jesus, into the story of this cross, into the story of Christ. And many of you helped by putting in a strand or two of yourself into that. And our liturgical arts team has been working diligently over the last week to finish it off so we can have it here and prep it. So if you see them, say thank you. But today we're weaving the story of God's story into ours once more. And in the story of Jesus overcoming death, it is written into us because of those waters of baptism. In our baptisms, Jesus is both sending us out into the world as well as calling us to hear the good news, to know that it is for us too. In our gospel at the outset of our worship service, we hear that the women are heading to the tomb, and they find that it's already been opened. And there's a young man that's sitting there that tells them, "Go and tell the disciples and Peter that he'll meet them up in Galilee. Go and tell the disciples and Peter." Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not quite certain how to read that passage. But sometimes I feel like when I hear that and Peter, you can start to imagine or envision your own name sitting there too, in Peter or in Dustin, or just place whatever name, and go and tell the disciples at the end. And what's tough sometimes is when we're reading text, we sometimes lose sight of where the inflection points are and what tone of voice is being used. In our world today, we've shifted from using voice communication oftentimes to using text. We started out, people, when they started writing letters and using handwritten notes and sending it off. And then when businesses started to emerge, there was the memo. I've only had to write memos in typing classes in high school, but since then I've never had to write one. Because right after that, right after high school, I ended up in college where their email was just starting to emerge, and so that's how I started communicating. And then we got to, and so we always got excited when we turned on our computer after waiting for the telephone lines to connect. And we hear, "You got mail." And it was like the most exciting thing ever. Then we moved into other text types of communication, like instant messengers, and now we have texting on our cell phones. And part of the problem with, this is great because we get to communicate much more quickly, but the problem with that is we miss out on the inflections and the tones and the facial expressions or what might be going on. When they send this, are they angry? Are they being a little bit passive-aggressive? Are they happy? Are they joyful? Sometimes they get a text in when the content is fairly neutral. I asked Patricia, and also not confidential, I asked Patricia, should we worry about this? Or, what's being said here? And so to combat that, we now have emojis. And to help us share whether or not we're happy, we just stick a smiley face on there, or a thumbs up, or there are several other emojis too that some are a little more interesting. And I even got one today, I think it was someone's own avatar saying, "That's great." And I was like, holy smokes, it does kind of actually look like you. And apparently you can text or just in emojis and communicate this way. My 7-year-old nephew Vance does it all the time. You get, it's like 2 pages of emojis, and I just look at it. Okay, whatever that means. But when we use these texts in these ways, we get a better sense of what's being said, what the inflections are. And because sometimes we get those texts and we're not quite, we see the message, but we're not quite certain what's being conveyed, right? And so we're standing in Costco in front of the place where they're giving out samples of chicken nuggets, and and just looking at our phones, and everyone's starting to line up behind us, getting annoyed at us because we're not quite certain how to read a text, and they just want chicken nuggets, and so we just get glued to our screens and there, and so we're trying to figure out what's the person saying. What kind of vibe are they projecting and trying to give to us? Like the phrase, "I will take care of it." Read one way, "I'll take care of it." It's kind of exciting. I get to do this. Read another way, it's kind of like, someone saying, "It's just fine, I'll take care of it." Like, half annoyed. Coming from a teenager, you're going to get the eye roll, like, "I'll take care of it." There's probably a better version. If the team wants to stand up right now, show me how that works. That'd be great. But emojis help by giving us the thumbs up, and the other person knows that we're good. Reading this text today, it would have been very helpful had the gospel writers in Greek somehow put in some sort of emoji that said, "Oh, this is what's being said," and to really give us a certainty to how to read what's going on here. But I think more certainty, though, while it's nice in some situations, especially in a text or an email, I think in this case it would actually be a hindrance. Because it won't allow our minds to wander. It won't allow ourselves to invite ourselves into this gospel story, to deepen our understanding of this event. An event that changes the world. The uncertainty of tone and inflection takes us to places where we could think about it in different ways and more importantly, the uncertainty helps us to more readily weave this gospel story into our own stories. Hearing the voice we need to hear at that moment when we hear this and read this. And hear. It could be that we hear an angry voice, the angry voice of our parents. Go and tell the disciples. And you better tell Peter too. You better tell that guy. We hear some condemnation in his voice, like, "You better get into your room," or "You better get to my office right now immediately because of what you've done." And Peter would deserve that too, right? Here he is, he's often considered like the second in command of the disciples, this community. But when push comes to shove, Peter is nowhere to be found. He doesn't stick around for Jesus. He doesn't stick up for Jesus. He vanishes. What's more is that Peter, in this moment, has a chance and an opportunity to share the great and mighty works of Jesus in the world. Maybe in the courtyard, those people weren't asking to condemn Peter. They're asking because they wanted to know a little bit more. They're asking, you were with him too, right? Tell us. But he never allows them to ask that follow us. Tell us more about this Jesus. They're excited. They want to know what the heck the hubbub is with all the leaders over there, and why they're condemning him and pushing him to death. Maybe that's what's going on. And so Peter's confronted with this opportunity to share, and he shies away from this opportunity, denying Jesus with oaths, saying, I never knew him, met him, or followed him. And it starts to feel a lot like us when we are confronted and worried about ourselves. We worry what people think. How will people respond to what I say? And so we acquiesce and don't share our faith in Jesus. This is not just to outsiders, often in our own homes. We're worried about to start now because the words aren't eloquent. We might still be wrestling a little bit and questioning our faith like some of those disciples. Or maybe we're worried that we'll face persecution of a friend if we admit to believing and following Jesus. Worried they might not be around us anymore. I wonder though, those people weren't asking to condemn, but they wanted to know more. And Peter in that courtyard missed an opportunity. And Peter, maybe there's a hint of disappointment in the voice of the young man. I mean, go and tell the disciples, and yeah, you better go tell Peter too. You know, with a shake of the head. I mean, we can sense that too, can't we? I mean, it's not easy to feel like following Jesus is, we're not always doing it like we're supposed to or think we should. We're not living into it. And so many of us can relate to that. Often we make our faith and religion about doing the right thing, and we do the right thing out of our faith, not because of what we believing that we'll get somewhere. So we sense this disappointment, and we know we have fallen short of doing the hard things that Jesus calls to, like loving our neighbor. I mean, even loving them when they start their car up at 9:50 at night and it has one of those loud mufflers and they're not too far away and you're just like, just lay down and put my book away and I'm ready to go to sleep, and now you're going to start your car warming up? It's a little annoying. We don't love our neighbors in that moment, do we? Or that yappy dog that somehow got away and we're watching it thinking to ourselves, you know, someone should really go grab that dog and just at least tie it down so that, you know, the owner could at least find it. Anyone out there going to do that? And it really is us that should do it, and not just allowing it to wander. But loving our neighbor is more than cars starting up or yapping dogs. It's sitting with those who we might not want to sit with otherwise. Sitting with a neighbor in pain. A neighbor who's hurting and physically or spiritually or just mentally. Sitting with them in that deep pain. And seeing them as a neighbor no matter what. Maybe even though they've offended us in the past. Or looking at their mistakes and judgments and trying to look past them and just seeing them with the same eyes that Christ sees them. And it's hard stuff. Really sitting with them. And being their neighbor. And I think that's sometimes that voice that we need to hear. And Peter too. I think though there's not condemnation in the voice of this young man. I think it's a voice of concern for Peter. Peter who has removed himself from the circle, the community of disciples. because of the short